Hello viewers, Lewis Whitley on the scene here. Welcome to another edition of Theatre in the Rounds. In this week's episode, we travel to Hamilton to see the Players Guild's amateur theatre production of Blithe Spirit. In Noel Coward's memorable comedy, as noted by the Guild's director Graham Clements, novelist Charles Condamine searches for new ideas for his new novel by conducting a seance. Unfortunately for Charles, his great idea ends up going terribly wrong by the sudden appearance of his dead late wife, who constantly tries to interfere with his current marriage. Oh, yikes. Though not professionals, there were some skilled performances by some of the actors. Anyone care to comment?
Well, the central couple that the plot follows is Charles and Ruth Condamine, played by Steve O'Brien and Deb Dejanay. They both gave strong performances, but Dejanay in particular, I thought did a very good job creating the authentic accent that the part needed.
Speaking of accents, O'Brien's really frustrated me. I couldn't place it, but I definitely don't think it was English. Though I will give him that whatever it was definitely consistent.
He did have some issues with clarity as well, though, and the problem was not exclusive to him. Many of the actors, including George Thomas and Gail Edwards, who played the Condamine's friends, Dr. and Mrs. Bradman, lost the wittiness of some of their lines through unclear diction.
Points to you, Elizabeth. Clarity is everything in finding the humor and comedy of manner scenes.
Issues of voice aside, Thomas and Edwards did a very good job providing an outside perspective on Ruth and Charles' arguments with and about Elvira. They allowed the audience to imagine how absurd it would seem to outsiders who couldn't see Elvira's ghost in the room with them.
Speaking of seeing a ghost in the room, Dejanay's performance really took me off guard because she seemed to jump back and forth between angry and understanding Charles' struggle, talking to Elvira and talking to Ruth. It just seemed to have no consistency or forcefulness to the action, although I think that's the writing problem, not the acting.
Yeah, O'Brien had some consistencies in his acting as well. I thought that when Ruth died at the end, he seemed passive, almost cold, and there just wasn't a lot of emotion there. The conflict of the show really depended on his struggle between the love for his two wives, and I just didn't see that thoroughly.
You know who we haven't touched on yet? Eileen Elcom. She's the actress who played Elvira. Comments, anyone?
Well, Elcam was great at capturing the sensuality of Elvira. It was very obvious why this was a woman that Ruth would be jealous of, even from beyond the grave.
But the seduction in her demeanor won't help her when she's ignoring everyone on stage. She was too showy and she played out too much. She was forced, making herself come across as disingenuous.
Yes, her accent didn't help with that either. Elcam couldn't quite pick up that clear British accent as well as her co-stars.
Well, Oriana, I think you topped that argument. Points to you.
But I thought Elcam did a great job at portraying herself as more supernatural than the rest of the cast. It was effective, but one thing I could add is an entrance would be much bigger with lightning, thunder, something big, but that's more of Graham Clements' directing than her acting.
Yes, watch it a little bit, Kevin. We're getting into lights and sound here. Let's stay on character, shall we? Let's talk about the smaller roles. Any moments from any of the other characters, smaller characters?
Well, what about Maggie Thomas, who played Madame Arcady, the medium? She was great as a lovable and believable crazy eccentric. She had fantastic comedic timing, and her physical gestures, along with her ability to incorporate hilarious use of props into passages of smooth dialogue, was brilliant.
And Monica Carney as Edith, the bumbling maid, was delightful as well. She really lightened the early moments of the play and made a small role very memorable.
I agree she did a fantastic job, but when the spotlight shifted to her at the end, it seemed like her actions were way too out there and forced. Just didn't seem that natural.
I don't know. I think that Carney was an excellent addition to the cast. And it was really fun that they had the cook on stage too. She was a stagehand dressed as the cook, but it made the set transitions a lot more fun.
For those of you watching at home, the cook is technically not in the play. She's mentioned, but we don't actually see the character. Points to you, Oriana, for creativity. You win the round. That realist set, though, creatively interesting or simply traditional and overdone? Thoughts?
I'm going to start and just say, wow. Just anyone really? That was beautiful.
Yeah, I was completely blown away, especially since we walked in knowing that this was an amateur theater company.
They did a fantastic job working with the realism. They created a really homey feel. It was like a real 1930s house walking in. Bookshelves with real books on the wall, the knickknacks, picture frames, a mirror on the back. It was absolutely wonderful. Real couch, real table, pouring drinks. Everything seemed to just work, created a world for these characters that we were peering into.
That patio. I was fully convinced that it led out some backstage door directly outside.
Yes! And when the wind blew through the house, making the curtains flutter, it really brought the outside world inside and helped me to easily believe in the world beyond the stage.
Totally. And that, combined with the back entrance that visibly extended beyond the set to create an actual hallway, had me believing entirely that the rest of the house could be beyond the room that we were in.
Well, before we move on entirely, opinions on the costumes?
I'm going to jump in and say, wow, again, completely blew me away just like the set. The costumes fit the time period perfectly.
I agree for the most part, but I was a little put off by Elvira's dress. The material looked out of place with the time period. It had a synthetic look to it that wouldn't have been found in the clothing of the 30s.
Great job, everyone. Lots of points in that round. Let's continue with props. There were quite a few of them in the play, and they were utilized a lot. Thoughts?
Utilized perfectly to me. For example, the breakaway vase that Elvira smashes on the ground really captivated everyone there. Ruth, Charles, myself, and the rest of the audience. Beautifully done by them.
I agree completely. Something else that was pretty cool was the way they used something Ruth loved against her. She talked about enjoying making a new bouquet of flowers every morning, and so the flowers on stage were changed for every new day of the show. This reinforced the text of the play as well as the struggle between the women in the play. It was subtle but effective and added something extra.
Yeah, the props really heightened the realism of the show. Especially when they interacted with things like the gramophone, it made the scene seem so real. And the space came alive because it looked and felt fully functional.
Speaking of the show coming alive, let's talk about sound. I'm great with segues. Comments, the floor.
Well, the only thing that I can think of is that gramophone, and how for the whole time I couldn't figure out if the sound was live or not.
I want to say that the sound was live. I could only hear anything coming out of the right speakers, right where the gramophone sat.
But that can be done with audio mixing as well, by making the sound only come through a certain set of speakers rather than all of them.
Does it really matter, though? I mean, I agree with what you guys are saying, but the fact that we're even arguing if it was real coming out of the actual gramophone or through the speakers just proves that they did a fantastic job. So kudos to the sound designer, stage manager, and sound operator. Excellent work.
And in a surprise turn of events, Kev came out on top. Great job, Kev. Okay, let's get down to it. Kev, this is your territory. Lighting. Let's talk about John Beckett's lighting design. Did it work for you guys?
First off, I want to say that they did a fantastic job. The lights looked so authentic to the space, and there were no visibility issues as far as I could tell.
I 100% agree. They had a chandelier with fully functioning lights. I loved it.
You all may have loved it, but I'm going to jump in here and say that I thought that the green spot over the table during the seance was awful. Come on, with the realist set, it was completely out of place.
The lighting wasn't meant to be realist. Let's be realist here. The play is about a person coming back to life as a ghost to haunt people. So a little playfulness with the lights didn't hurt.
For sure. The spooky lights, the spooky sound, the moving of the table worked great. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know, and the lights were timed perfectly. Every time a character touched that switch, lights were out, and I loved it.
That's what I meant. When Madame Arcadi went to turn the lights off, there was no smooth transition, just BAM! Mysterious green light. The seance hadn't even started yet.
You know what? That does make sense. They could have waited longer for that.
Speaking of waiting longer than that, was anyone else bothered by those blackouts? It seemed to last 15, 20 seconds sitting there like, when are we getting on with it? Let's be real. Nothing changed when they come back anyways. Just same set.
To be fair, they had costume changes to do. And they worked in some transition scenes with the maid and the stagehand that I think really helped. They did what they could.
Yeah, they did do what they could. As mentioned with the cook. Kudos to them for that. Although again, one nitpicky thing, there was one lighting transition. And the lights seemed to fall from like 100 to 90 to 50, just jumping really scattered instead of smoothly. 100, 99, 98, 97. I just kept like catching me like, oh, there it goes, there it goes, there it goes. Not, there it goes. Overall though, I really enjoyed it.
I kind of see what you're saying for those small parts, but they don't define the lighting as a whole. I think we can all agree that, for the most part, the lighting was done excellently.
Well, based on the points, I think it's obvious to see that Jen and Elizabeth both just couldn't keep up. I'm sorry, Elizabeth. Jen, it's time for your curtain call. And with that in mind, congratulations, Kevin and Oriana. You're moving to the final round. Strap yourselves in, because here we go.
You know, walking into a community theater or amateur theater, you never know what you're going to get. But I was absolutely blown away when I walked in there and saw this performance. The great set. And nobody mentioned how those special effects at the end, with the props moving, flying all over the place, picture frames twisted. Did you not think about that one? Excellent job by the cast and crew. 10 out of 10, would see again.
Okay, first of all, the effects with the set moving at the end, not that hard. There were people standing behind the stage. Not a huge deal. And that green light, I still have a bone to pick with it. I mean, for amateur theater, it blew me away. We can agree on that. Fine. But I definitely think that there were some huge missteps.
Like what, Oriana?
Well, like I said, the green light. And we talked earlier, the accents were not totally on point, as well as that awkward entrance Elvira had. I mean, the show as a whole, I'll give it to them. Great job. But I'm not saying that there were no problems here.
The entrance by Elvira, it might have had a little bit to do, but come on, she was fantastic the way she treated herself. Supernatural, I'm a ghost, I'm just gonna float around the stage. Perfect, how could you not like that?
She's a ghost, but she's still pretending to be a real person. Like, she was a real person when she died.
Yeah, but she's a ghost now, she's not a real person anymore.
So ghosts just, like, fly around? She was walking everywhere.
Yeah, what do you want? You want
You
her on a
have to
fly?
adopt the world of the play, is what I'm saying. If she's gonna walk in, then she should be keeping that. She can't just, like, float in. It doesn't make any sense.
She didn't float in, it's a figure of speech, come on.
That's a great point, Kev. What did she expect her to fly in, to come out of a trapeze, almost like a circus show?
They could have tried.
Well, it sounds a little crazy for amateur theater with a low budget. With that in mind, Kevin, you come away with the win this round. Great job! Way to go, you're leading the whole thing here.